if you look on COMEX in particular, the speculators are just not there. I mean, they haven't really bought into it. The way I would measure that interest is looking at open interest. An open interest in gold is less than half the long-term average. Open interest in silver is roughly at the long-term average. I mean, there are obviously a few speculators in there, hedge funds, whatever. Not all that many. So this shakeout, it looks sort of suspiciously coordinated. I don't mean that, over the weekend, various bullion banks got together and had a meeting and decided to bash the market. But you do get this feeling, when you're a jobber. I mean, I've known jobbers, which is really what they do. I mean, the market maker is a jobber, basically. I've known these guys. I've been on the other side of them since 1970. And they do have this sense, if you like, in the market, when it's right to bash the price of something which they're short of. It's almost like a second sense. And if they haven't got it, they're not going to survive terribly long in whatever they're dealing in. So if one good dealer has got the feeling this is the moment when it's going to come off, the others also have the same feeling. So you get this sort of compounding effect. And of course, I think what the buyers are doing in this, and remember, we're not talking retail market here, we're talking about wholesale market, and we're talking about big derivatives. The buyers, I think, they would just sit on their hands and watch this play out a bit before they decide, shall we buy some? And if so, what's a level? And so on and so forth. So, this is why I think this shakeout has been so severe. I mean, I'm looking at what's happened in silver. I mean, silver is down nearly 7%. Platinum's down 5.7%. Palladium down 5.3%. And gold, as you said earlier, is 5%. I mean, these, given the rise that we've seen, this isn't actually all that great. I mean, you would just say, this is volatility. I've always told people, don't trade this market. I mean, you'd be nuts to trade it because the guys on the other end are so powerful. They'll take every cent you've got off you if you're going to trade it. And, the answer basically is that you've got to work out why you're interested in gold and silver. You've got to understand what gold and silver, particularly gold in the current context, what it is. You've got to understand that it is legal money without counterparty risk. Forget what the US Treasury says about gold being a pet rock or whatever. The reality is that in our common law and in everyone's common law, gold is money, it's final settlement, there is no counterparty risk. And the volatility isn't so much in gold. I mean, obviously there's been volatility in gold, but it's mainly in the currencies. So when you see, for example, the People's Bank of China buying gold, the way to look at it is actually they're selling dollars. And they have other use for those funds, but basically they don't want dollars. So that's, if you like, the sort of their gold purchases are almost the small change which they haven't got any other use for, because they've got quite enough gold. I mean, not necessarily within their reserves, but the nation has lots of gold spread around various accounts, including the People's Liberation Army, the Communist Youth Wing, and so on and so on and so on. So that's the way to look at it. So you've got to think, okay, do I buy gold because I think that paper currencies are going to lose purchasing power? If you think that, then the answer is yes, and you hold it, you hoard it, you tuck it away. Otherwise, don't mess with it. Forget it. It's a waste. You'll just have sleepless nights if you try and trade it, because I can tell you, you try and trade this market, they will take you for every cent you've got. That's the reality of it. I think there's another point which is worth making. We've seen various large American banks, turning bullish on gold. I mean, Jamie Dimon said he wouldn't be surprised if we went between 5,000 and 10,000. You had Morgan Stanley saying, you should put 20% of your portfolio into gold, which actually is an extraordinary statement from an establishment bank like that. I could imagine that Scott Bessent would sort of phone him up and say, "Why are you messing up my world?" But so they've turned bullish, and from the point of view of market makers, the bullion banks who are trading, if you like, on the right side of the quote, this is not helpful to them at all to have this. So this is why. If someone told me that there was a coordinated move to basically bash gold and silver and also platinum group metals lower, I could believe it. I really could, because what they would want, it's not that they're anti-gold or silver, it's just they want to get their position square. And I think this is a desperate attempt to just do that. Let's try and, get our bears closed a bit, and then at least, we can trade it at a higher level. I think that's all. That's what's going on, if you like, in London and New York. The central bank community, particularly in the global south, BRICS and so on and so forth, they can see what China is doing. With the SGE opening vaults in Hong Kong and also Saudi Arabia, and there are probably plans for other ones, or certainly facilities elsewhere, whereby gold can be exchanged for yuan. This is setting up a system which will allow the Chinese, if it is necessary, to protect the yuan's value by turning it into a gold substitute. But that would be at the international trade level. The idea that individuals in China would be allowed to, have a gold exchange, if you like, for their yuan. I mean, I don't see that at all. The authorities in China, I think, are all about hanging on to what they've got. They don't really want to part with it. And I think it would be a mistake to sort of think that the Chinese authorities, whether we're talking about PBOC's reserves or whether we're talking about the hidden holdings, sort of spread around the various communist organizations, government organizations, I don't really see that they will be feeding this new vaulting system outside China. I think they're going to still hang on to their gold. But I think what they will do is they'll say, well, what you could do is you could acquire some gold, put it in that vault. You could exchange it for yuan when it comes to trade settling and all the rest of it, so that you foreign country, have the facility to trade in a gold-backed yuan. They will set the rate at some stage. I think that's inevitably what's going to happen. And it doesn't really require China to part with some of its gold. Maybe a small amount, but basically, I think the idea is to make the yuan, if you like, the dollar's replacement. And this one will be a lot more secure than the dollar. I think that's the important thing. And as the dollar declines, we're coming to, there's no doubt in my mind that we're coming to the end of the fiat currency system. The Chinese, I think, are perfectly aware of this, and they want to protect their currency. They want to protect, their position, and they don't want other currencies, for goodness sake. If the dollar goes down, what happens to the other currencies? They go with it. It's as simple as that. So they will want to trade in their own currency. Of that, I'm absolutely convinced, and they will want to protect the value of their currency. So we can see this is beginning to happen. Now, I think the central banks around the world can see it. I think governments are beginning to see it. I think some of the really big players, like ultra-high net worth individuals, the sort of really wealthy families around Asia, who liaise with politicians, who have them round to dinner, and all the rest of it. I think this is the back chat that goes on with these meetings. They know about it. I think that some of the smarter hedge fund managers in the US probably know a little bit about it or suspect it. The rest of the investment world has not got a clue. But you'll find that the information filters down. It'll filter down gradually as events unfold, and there will be if you like, a growing understanding actually actually about what actually is happening. And we're looking at the end of the fiat dollar. I think this is really what it's all about. The thing about Bretton Woods is that it was this sort of high level, you can't exchange your currency for gold. But this is a system which basically everybody who's in Bretton Woods, we're in there at a fixed rate, and gold basically is the tie for all the fixed rates. And that was fine, so long as the Americans, who had the bulk of the gold, certainly in the late 1940s, that was fine until the Americans began to run out of gold. And then, you had the end of Bretton Woods. And Zoltan Pozsar, I don't know, you remember him? He was Credit Suisse. He described the current situation as Bretton Woods 2, and, which is not the rather clumsy way of putting it, because it's not a Bretton Woods system in any way. So you had the Bretton Woods system, you had the fiat currency system, and he was raising a question mark: are we going into Bretton Woods 3?
Right. Yeah.
In other words, is this the end of the fiat currency system, and it's going to be replaced by something else? That was the question he raised, and he was raising this question 3 or 4 years ago. And I think the thing that's really done it was COVID. Then the economy shut down. There was an explosion in government debt as a result. And it's clear to me that large parts of our economies haven't recovered from that at all. I mean, you've got some zombie companies who took on debt basically because they ceased trading for however many months. They took on debt and they've never really got rid of it. And the problem is that interest rates have gone up. They can't afford current interest rates. And of course, this has led to other distortions. I mean, for example, you've got the shadow banking system, so-called, in America. In this case, we're looking at private equity and hedge funds who use their, if you like, their rating in order to borrow from the banks to lend on to those who basically the banks won't lend to. Why won't the banks lend? I mean, the banks aren't stupid. They won't lend to these companies because they're zombies. So the zombies are getting sort of payday loans out of the shadow banking system. And that's a big accident waiting to happen. It really is. I mean, and this is what Jamie Dimon was referring to the other day. He's talking about cockroaches. You see one, there are going to be more.